Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Shit Done, episode 4. I can't believe we're already on episode 4, frankly. It feels like yesterday that we had this idea for the show, and we're like, hey, let's come up with a pun, and it was just episode 1. Comment below if you've joined us from the very first episode. I'd love to know if you've been joining us from episode 1. And as you folks are joining us, please let us know where you are joining from. We really want to know all of your locations. Looks like we have Vivek joining us from SF, Ashutosh, hello, joining us from Dehradun, Mano joining us from Toronto. So folks, please post your locations. We want to know where you are coming from, and we'd love to represent your city. We have a packed show for you today, and we're going to be delving into Claude setups. We're going to be delving into Openclaw setups and basically talking about all things agents and sub-agents. Hello, Manir, welcome. It's great to see you. And so folks, I'm also really excited for our guest today who will be joining us a little bit later in the show, Kinar Vora, who is the VP of Engineering at Forward Financing. And he'll have lots to share in terms of their AI setup and how they AI. Especially coming from a more of a regulated industry, fintech. And then, this is okay. I like that one. Thanks, Mansoor. Toronto, Ontario, Canada in the house. But then he's also joining from the Orion arm in the Milky Way. Thank you very much for that. Folks, yes, please keep posting your locations. We obviously want to know where you're from, but we have a packed show to get to. Now, here's what's really cool about today's show. Ta-da-da! We are going to be giving out Kitty Town coffee throughout. So just stay tuned there. that was all those are all the blends. But I love this roast. It's so good. I feel like our producer Mano is just covering my face with the with the coffee. But folks, here's how this works. So we are going to pick winners from the audience. And Michael, great to see you. You're one of our OGs. You've been joining us since episode 1. So thank you so much. It's great to see you here. But here's how this works. So we're going to pick winners from folks that are commenting, asking questions. So, just share all of your thoughts with us as you go, and you might win an awesome coffee kit. And what's really cool is every bag of coffee sold actually feeds a homeless kitty too. So it goes to a really good cause, and it's a woman-owned business. So yeah, we're going to be picking lots of winners. And hello, Dan. It's great to see you here too. So let's kick it right off. There's been a ton of debate about Openclaw agents, Claude agents, and then I'd love to hear from you folks. What are you using? What does your setup look like today? What's worked for you? We're going to include all of that. This is a live show, so what's really cool is it's really all audience participation, and so we want to hear all about your setups too, and then what's working, what's not. So what we've really seen with Openclaw is, I'm just going to be pretty blunt here. I feel like a lot of the use cases are really limited to morning briefings. They're limited to email digests. And I think a lot of the employee setups in terms of actually having an Openclaw agent on Slack, I feel like a lot of that has still been really, really limited. What's getting us really excited about agents is, of course, the fact that, just as a quick intro, I am the co-founder and CEO of Optimal AI, where we are building the judgment and quality layer for AI-generated code. And so we're learning so much. There's just been a ton of learning as we've been, pushing together agents, building suites of agents, getting agents to think, process, even convene and make judgment calls. And obviously, as you folks know, as engineering teams and as engineering leaders, we're kind of navigating a big era of change as well, as we're all delving into agents. And so the whole purpose of the show is to get together and actually talk about some of our setups. And Chris, it's great to see you here. Oh, hello. I do remember that, Chris. It was awesome hanging out in Boston. Folks, I think one of the things with Openclaw versus Claude, I'm really excited to welcome our first guest, the Git father, onto the show to help us really think through some of these subsuites of agents, and then just be my partner in crime as we talk about it. Sayed, Git father, welcome to the show. Hello. Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh,
All
sorry.
right.
Now you
Yes,
can.
you are live now.
Yeah.
Yes, welcome.
Thanks for having me once more. I'll be here on every episode, so I shouldn't be a guest. I'm like a
Okay.
permanent fixture.
Yes, you are a permanent fixture. Okay, so let's delve right in because we have a pretty packed show today. Starting out with, so I am not a super Openclaw believer, and I know you are. And I feel like for me, I've
Mhm.
seen some of the use cases. You've been using it consistently for LinkedIn posts. I'm seeing you use it for some of these daily digest briefings. I've consistently heard from other founders as well that they even have like sales account executives that are basically Openclaw agents.
Mhm.
I'm still skeptical because I feel like there's so much token usage that happens in the back. I'm also skeptical about the security applications of it. But that being said, I did want to share with our audience an actual and very specific claw setup. So let me just quickly share my screen and also, kind of talk this through and see what say things. So here is like a really quick Openclaw setup. So this is by Peter Yang. This is like a full, and I'll share the link, a link in the chat too. But the idea here is that, as you know, Openclaw, you can run it on a dedicated computer. You can give it its own credentials. And then the other thing is that you can give it read access to your main account and write access to select files. Now, you can also just buy a Mac Mini and basically have it running dedicated on the Mac Mini. Now, in terms of like everyday tasks and delegation, a lot of the, like specific use cases I've seen have been around managing calendar invites, editing Google Docs, replying via voice, and then these daily morning briefs is what I've seen like majority of the X posts really around.
Yeah.
I mean, I've started playing around with it. Said I know you've played around with it so much more. So, what are your thoughts? Like, what are the specific use cases you've seen work, and what are you most looking forward to either trying out or just kind of expanding in terms of use case?
Yeah. So, I mean, Openclaw is probably now more outdated than anything for me. I have it still doing some really basic stuff like finding research papers and yeah, it gets me like a digest together. It's really good at operating the browser. And that's really what I enjoy about it. Like using Claude, the browser operation is pretty bad. So for coding, I do not use Openclaw. I am using two separate agent frameworks. So I'm using Claude Code with Tmux, which does a whole bunch of multi-agent coding. And then I use Hermes, which is the new hot thing. So the difference between using Openclaw and Hermes is that Hermes actually has a self-learning framework with a really good management for state. So like it knows what context needs to be passed. And so those are things that Openclaw is not good at. So moving to Hermes, it runs stuff in Docker containers and does like can run multiple sessions really well. So I've kind of shifted my workflow. I initially started with Openclaw. I was like, okay, I'll have it do some of my bug fixes as well. But over time, maintaining all those files in there got cumbersome. And so primarily though, 80% of the work goes into Claude Code and using the experimental agent mode that they have. So I use that mostly nowadays. So yeah, Openclaw is like really for simple use cases now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, and just for context, folks, I know this is going to sound crazy, but this month we're growing about 58% in terms of usage. So our usage has been skyrocketing too on the OptiBot side, which is for code review. And I think, one of the things that's been happening in the market is this is a part of our news segment was that Cursor BugBot announced that they're going to be charging $1.20 per review on average. And that really adds up as, and what's really fascinating is that over the last 6 months, we've seen the average company go from about 100 reviews a month to about 750 reviews a month. And in fact, even staying at the same size in terms of team. And then what's really interesting is we've been doubling the number of code reviews that OptiBots are doing every month, just because of how fast we're growing in terms of number of customers. But I think what's been really interesting with a lot of this change is that as folks are using Claude code agents, then the second thing is that they use Optibot on the code review side. So Zaid, walk us through your Claude code setup in terms of like sub agents. You've also we also talked a little bit about managed agents. So can you also tell our audience what the difference between managed agents and then Claude agents is, or general agents, and then also like. And as you're using more agents, it's so fascinating, right? Like the number of PRs is exploding too. And we're seeing like this huge explosion in terms of number of PRs, dead code, maintainability becoming a challenge. Let's delve into all that.
Awesome. Yeah. So my setup today, 80% of it, not using Hermes, using Claude Code, uses Git work trees, the typical setup. And so I'll divide my day depending on how I feel. If I want to do something simple, I'll write the code myself. And if I want something long running, complex tasks will end up on Claude Code. I have specific Claude MD files that do very specific things in terms of like data migrations, infrastructure, bug fixes. So it really depends on where I need them to engage. And that works well. Like it's out of the box. You can use Git work trees. That was like the simplest thing that they could have done, shipped sometime in Feb. I've been mostly using that with Tmux to manage multiple sessions of Claude Code. And then until recently, they've added some experimental features that you can turn on. And one of those is actually using they have an agent view on the CLI, and you can turn that on. And there's a flag. I'm trying to remember what the flag is on Claude Code, but if you turn that flag on, you should be able to basically view all the agents without using Tmux. So if you're not interested in getting another terminal installed, this agent view shows you all the multiple agents running, so you don't need Tmux. That's the only difference that I see in there. So that's my usual setup right now, is having that work stream set up on Claude Code itself using the CLI. For really simple tasks, like if I'm working on a single task, I'll use sub-agents. I think people forget you can just spawn sub-agents from Claude Code. And for a simple task where you're building a feature, use the sub-agents. You do not need multiple sessions. You only use multiple sessions if you have a bunch of long-running tasks that you need to run. Then I say set up like 3 or 4 sessions doing things like a whole rewrite of a service maybe. So that's usually how I use it. And then I have Hermes that does a lot of research work. Sometimes I'll have it fetch documentation. I maintain an internal like knowledge base through that. So again, browser-based stuff, I still depend on Hermes more than anything to grab a lot of the knowledge and planning work. Even though you can plan in Claude Code, I plan in Hermes instead.
Okay, so let's talk about, I think we are going to be announcing our first winner very, very soon too. So folks, keep bringing those comments up. I actually, I'm seeing some questions already coming into the chat. Folks, feel free to flood us with your questions. So we're going to be constantly just like running through these questions as they come in. I'm going to address the first one. Is self-learning really beneficial? I think this is a really good question because one of the other reasons, and TC, welcome. It's great to see you here. One of the other reasons I really like that question is because one thing we consistently hear on the agent side is ideally they should be self-learning. They should be learning which Git trees are, like what are the best approaches to a given problem? How is the code base changing? All of that. So get into that. Walk us through and TC, if you have any other follow-ups to that. Kind of curious as to what's in your mind when you think of self-learning too.
Yeah, I think self-learning is beneficial to an extent. I think what Hermes does might be overkill in some ways. It's not good for coding, which is why I use it for planning. It's good for organizing thoughts that are, or at least like memories that are similar, because it uses semantic search. So I would say it's good for that purpose, but when you're coding, some of that doesn't always come out right, and you can end up with situations where you have memory poisoning. You're actually working in a team. Self-learning can't just be like your learnings. It needs to be shared opinions, at least in a code base. And so that's why I think for a personal agent, Hermes does great. When you're working with a team, I still think there's a lot to do there where, something running on your machine is not exposed to everyone else's work. And so that's where it falls apart. So it is beneficial to some extent. It really also depends on the task that's at hand. But for coding, it's a much harder ask to have self-learning.
Okay, so folks, let's talk about Openclaw agents. And I feel like one of the things we've really been delving into with Openclaw is, can they become full-fledged employees? And so I'm kind of curious about, so I've been looking into this. I've been looking into whether Openclaw can, specifically how an Openclaw agent can really go through, say, Slack documentation, files that are inside Slack, and basically use those as context. We also have quite a few customers, just at Optimal, that have told us about their Openclaw setups, and the fact that they're spending anywhere between $5,000 to $9,000 per agent, which I thought was also really interesting in terms of spend. And so I'm kind of curious, Sayed, what's your take on all this? I know your Openclaw agent is your LinkedIn news agent, which basically helps you draft LinkedIn posts. And I know you've had a couple of posts go really viral, but were any of those actually first drafted by Openclaw, or was it still, I know there was one post you had that had 900,000 views, which was crazy, but I don't think Openclaw drafted that one, did it?
No, that was made with just basic Gemini API. I didn't use Openclaw for that. I eventually trained Openclaw to write them by giving it the tone. The consumption of tokens is really high on Hermes and Openclaw just because of the way that they use tools. And there's a lot of optimization that you can do, but it really goes down to, do you have the time to set this up? And then when it comes to employees, same issue. It can actually go in and solve all those problems? Do you want to pay? Does that task cost $10? Does the cost of that task of pulling a file, reading it, and giving you back an output, do I want to pay $2, $10, or whatever the price is? That's really what it comes down to.
Okay, I love this question. Dan is asking, for someone starting to explore coding with AI, what is the one thing you recommend learning and mastering first? Oh, that's such a great question. Thanks, Dan. Now, say a beginner mindset. Remember, this is just getting started with AI. What's your answer here?
First thing, make a copy of your code base so make a separate copy. I know you might have a code base or something in mind. Always, if you're not using Git, make a copy. If you're not curious, if you don't know how to use branches and things like that, so learn Git first, understand that, and then once you have an understanding, that's like a 10-minute thing. And then the next thing is try to pick up small problems that you can fix on an existing code base. It could even be an open source one. Try to break someone else's code apart before you break your own, and then try to master Claude Code first, because it has all the tooling in there. Like, how do I spawn a sub agent? How do I split my work into smaller tasks? And so instead of one-shotting everything, it's about really dividing that big problem into smaller pieces. That I think is a really good place to start without delving into the fundamentals of computer science, data models, all of that stuff.
Okay, and then if you don't have a code base at all, you're just getting started with AI, what do you do?
If you don't have a code base at all, ask it to generate one for you, in a language of your choice.
Okay, my answer to that is just get on Claude Code, Claude Cowork. Claude Cowork is actually also really, really good. I just attended a Claude session that was by Anthropic. They are really pushing Claude Cowork for non-technical users in particular. And but honestly, Claude Code is, I think, just more user-friendly because you can just use it through the terminal. And then lots more questions coming in, but folks, we're gonna get to your questions, we promise. Very quickly, we want to announce our first winner of the coffee kit. And so Kittytown Coffee, our first winner, let's see. Ooh, Aishwarya Jayant, congratulations, yay. Woo, Aishwarya's our first winner. You have won a Kittytown Coffee. It will be heading straight to your house, especially if you've given us your address. If you haven't, we'll be reaching out. Okay, and so Now, before we delve into more questions, and folks, keep them coming, we promise we never end the show until we get to everybody's questions. So before we do that, so we've been thinking a lot about security vulnerabilities. As you folks know, supply chain attacks are on the rise. Sec chain vulnerabilities are on the rise, and especially because of all of the AI-generated PRs and AI-generated code. So we have a really exciting announcement. We actually made this announcement at the RSA conference in San Francisco. So let's roll over to the tape so that you folks can watch the big announcement. I'm Iba Masood. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Optimal AI.
Hi, I'm Sayed. I'm the co-founder and CTO.
And we're really excited to be here with you today at the RSA conference, the leading security conference in San Francisco. So Sayed, can you tell me about the AppSec agent?
What we're doing with our AppSec agent is really going through your code base with a fine-tooth comb. We're looking at everything from definitions, from business logic, anywhere that possibly could be an attack vector for any malicious intent, and then surfacing all of that up to both security leads at your company as well as engineers, and then helping them fix them as well.
So you can think about this AppSec agent as being a much more thorough version of what you would see in the market today. This actually came about from our customers. It is because of the code reviews that our customers were seeing where they're like, oh, OptiBot is catching security vulnerabilities, it's catching bugs, it's catching all of these issues early in the code review process, where we then decided to allow OptiBot to also run security scans.
I think the amazing part about what we've built is, one, it bolsters security. So yes, we do this on a PR for PR level, but the other amazing thing is because these are scheduled scans, and they can be run on demand, and they run on the whole code base. So they're not just running on your PR like the code review tool. If you have external contributors, or if you're even an open source repo, you can have that scheduled and run, and it outputs the evidence in your GitHub or over your CLI, so then you can have it addressed by other agents or by OptiBot itself.
When we designed OptiBot, we built it to be the most thorough agent when it comes to code base context. Code-based context is an important problem because you want your agent to have the full context of all of your repos, all of the architectural decisions, past decisions that have been taken, so that it can make decisions like a senior security engineer or a senior software engineer. So at Optimal AI, we're excited to have a slew of customers using us, including MongoDB, Prometric, Mpulse, industry-leading organizations. We're designing and envisioning a present reality where agents are thoughtful, they're thinking through, and even as they're communicating with each other, they're trying to reduce noise on the part of the teams that they serve. All right. Well, thank you for watching that, folks. That was a really exciting launch that we did. Funnily enough, just even in the last couple of weeks since that launch, we've grown like we're pretty much growing about 25 to 50% month over month. And FYI, you folks can all try OptiBot. I know several of our customers are already here in the chat, so thank you so much for joining us today. We love working with you. But then whoever is new to OptiBot, you folks can always try it out. And just remember, we do free trials, and you're able to do pretty much like almost unlimited code reviews. I mean, we usually really end the trials at either 2 weeks or 1,000 reviews. And so these reviews are thorough. They work with full code base context, and OptiBot works to actually build your code graph before it does so. So if you are interested in a trial, just feel free to head on over to the link. We just posted it in the chat. And yeah, happy code reviewing. Okay, so there's a couple of questions that have come in that I'd love to address before we get into, I'm so excited to welcome our guest. I can see him backstage. I'm so excited to welcome him on stage. So before we do so, and I know we have so much to discuss with Kinar, we'll just rapid fire go through some of these questions, starting with PJ. Welcome, it's so great to see you here, PJ. Once your agent or any agent reviews a Claude Code generated PR, what do you as a human manager read the PR for, and what are you looking out for? This is a really interesting question because I know for us, our human review time has gone down by about 45% ever since we instituted OptiBot. We've also now started instituting OptiBot on merging some of the PRs too, but Sayed, how would you answer this specifically as a human manager?
Yeah, I still read the PR. I will skim over the PR and make sure that there's patterns that match what I'm used to seeing. And because it's an existing code base, I would know those patterns. And then I like reading the summary and the file by file changes that we actually show in our PR. That helps me understand what files were changed, what exactly those impact of those files are. And then in terms of like Optibot's comments, for example, I'll mainly focus on seeing if those were resolved. Obviously, we wait for approval from it anyway, but I like reading and checking that there was some interaction with that. A lot of the engineers on the team will chat back and forth and ask questions. But I still find it valuable to read it because there's so many shifts in a day in the code base. And because we're a small team, I like to stay on top of what's happening.
I think the other thing was really interesting is marketing and growth have started shipping PRs too on our side. So in our team, what we've seen is that the volume of PRs also for us has been growing. And of course, it's also been doubling month over month in terms of because of our customer base too. But I think what's been interesting is just being able to see agents be productive enough to review 20,000, 50,000 PRs and not have any latency. I think one of the other things that's been really interesting is to keep review times down to 2 minutes. So that's been another thing that we've been working really hard on. But I think one of the other, at least for me, I know for our marketing PRs, I don't read them. Like I don't even read them. It's just, we're pretty much auto merging anything that's front end related. But what Optibot is interestingly does on some of the marketing related PRs and landing page related PRs is it's just doing SEO checks. And so, that's really the level of quality checks we're seeing, at least on the marketing side. It's very different, right, versus like a backend PR. Ashwarya is asking, do you recommend learning about the basics about LLMs before working on these agents? And does it help understand how things work under the hood? It's a really good question.
To some extent, I would say I would be mostly interested if I were learning this for the first time is building my own and testing it out. The instructions and prompts are way more important than the dynamics of how the LLM works. There's so many models to choose from that itself is so overwhelming.
Okay, and last question from TC. I guess I'm extremely curious what interaction model evolves when you have a self-learning system and you no longer have the context. I think this is a follow-up question to his last question on self-learning.
Yeah, that's a tough question. At least in our case, if we're looking at code bases, there's a lot of touch points. There's your reviews, your commit messages, and then the interaction model either needs to be both a some type of code graph and then also needs to have some type of vector storage. It really depends again on the task itself. So it's a hard question. I think it's very task dependent too.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that question, TC. All right. And Syed, thank you for your segment. And appreciate
Awesome.
all the
excited to have our guest join, and
I know.
See you folks soon.
All right. Okay. Well, I am so excited to welcome our next guest. Kinar Vora is somebody I've gotten to know over the last few weeks. I deeply respect his opinions. We've gotten to share, we've gotten to share meals, but then also share boba and talk about where all of this is going. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting about Kinar's perspective is that he's coming at it from the perspective of someone that is really instituting AI and pushing it forward within his org. So, Kinar, without further ado, welcome to Git Shit Done.
Well, thank you, Eva. Thank you for having me here.
Awesome. Well, so folks, to introduce Kinar, he is the head of engineering in the AI lab at Forward Financing. And I feel like there's just been so much change and evolution, Kinar, that you've navigated, not only in your career, but also at Forward. So can you please just share with our audience a little bit about your career and where your interest in AI started?
So first of all, I'm based in San Jose. I'm based in the Bay Area. Been here for a very, very long time. My whole career has been in tech. I quote this little story is when I was in the 8th grade. So I'm born and brought up in India, in Mumbai. And in the 8th grade is when I first saw a computer. And I fell in love with it because I coded in BASIC and MS-DOS. Again, someone that's as old as me could probably relate to. But from there, I was fortunate again to catch on to the SaaS wave. I started building like browser-based projects since 97, 98, and then kind of been riding all the waves. What's been very interesting, we all look at our careers by saying, what companies you work for, what stages you work for. I've foundationally tried to stay working in smaller companies. So like I've been working at different stages and different sizes of startups that I worked in, because I always felt like, the more you become a senior, you kind of get away from technology. So I wanted to kind of stay closer to technology. And what that has translated into, not that I've learned people management, I've learned building applications at scale, and here comes AI, which is now a generational technology, or maybe a once in a lifetime technology, which is helping you build stuff, which I think Iba will probably get into. And that's what's fascinating. Again, November of 2022, if I'm saying that right, when ChatGPT 3.5 came out, and everything's changed since then, right? I think so. Yeah, I've been fortunate to be able to build like a chatbot in my last role, where I was the CTO at WebGility, and here we've also started like an AI lab at Forward.
Yeah, I love that harkening back to chatbots, because that was also my experience. I feel like that's when I started having my wow moments, when I was like building decision trees. I think, Kinar, let's delve a little bit into like just AI transformation. You talked about it at a personal level. I'm kind of curious, like, why you think this is a once in a generation change.
Well, first of all, that's a pretty loaded question, and for good reasons, right? What AI has done, and again, I'm assuming this is more of a technical crowd, so I'm going to speak to kind of the more technical audience here, and let's say the toolings that we've looked at, ChatGPT or Codex, or whether it's Claude Code and all of them, they've actually reduced the barrier to taking something that is more structured and giving us ways to kind of build. Basically, said simply, coding is now becoming almost table stakes now, right? Like it's kind of becoming a commodity. Now, I know it can be debatable. I do agree it is. But I think the point is it's facilitating us now to be able to do a lot more and trying to be more creative. So I think one of the places I think I see is as we are kind of getting more and more using the tools to be able to build newer stuff faster, because I think from a business standpoint or management standpoint, you see it as becoming faster. And then the transformation becomes harder because now your roles are changing. Different roles can play, multiple different aspects because the tooling is now so foundationally strong. And then the transformation becomes harder because now we are talking at a much larger scale of how do you bring the whole company and everybody along with you, right? So it's not, I think I'm going to quote a couple of statements. So I was at the Interrupt conference last week, and Andrew Ng was there. And a couple of things I say, what he said was, engineering is no longer becoming the bottleneck. It's actually the business teams that are starting to become the bottleneck, right? And it's kind of interesting as a management person to be saying, oh yeah, I see that now. But it's also very hard because now the business teams have to kind of adapt to saying, how do we provide more input so we can move faster together? So I think it's a technological change, it's a people change, and fundamentally it's a cultural change too. So when you put all of that together, that's why I think it's a once in a generational change, I think, that we are kind of going through.
So Kinar, let's talk about companies and teams in terms of bringing them along together, right? So one of the things we get to delve into with a lot of these conversations that we're doing with heads and VPs of engineering is, how do you AI with the wider org and wider team? Yeah. So I know, Kinar, within Forward, I feel like you folks have had certain hackathon days and AI days. So can you walk us through what a more recent AI day has looked like and some surprising insights or findings from these internal events?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do hackathon twice a year, and we had one in February at the beginning of this year, and we let the teams kind of come up with their own charters and come up with some POCs. What was really surprising for most of the people, I call it our aha moment, is when the teams actually got together to starting using the tools, the things that we thought were harder or it's going to take longer actually started taking lesser time. And I get it, it was a POC, it was only a one-day hackathon. It was like between 4 to 6 hours, 8 hours. But that's, I think, where the power of the tooling kind of comes in, right? So that's one thing that we did. The second thing I think we've done along with that is we started doing demos to non-technical and business stakeholders, and it surprised them not only to the power of what the AI tooling can do, because sometimes you have to go explain the AI tooling. It's very technical. To explain to non-technical audience get harder. But when we started showing them what we did and how fast we did it, has been a big surprise. One last thing I'll also mention, Eva, along with that is, this is what the tech team has been doing, engineering and the tech team. What we've also started doing overall as a company is we do a lot of these learning loops, we call them. They're like learning sessions where we have a handful of people come once in a month, talk to the whole company about the things that they have tried. I also ran like an AI workshop with the leadership team to kind of give them like a really simple example to solve in like a really small time frame, like 30 minutes or an hour, right? Because it shows the power of what you can do, not just with prompting, but with the right tooling and all. So we're doing a lot of different things, not just for the technical audience, but we're also doing it for the non-technical folks, like the operational teams and the teams, so that they can all learn together. So there's a lot of this effort on building this collective knowledge, if you may.
Yeah, and Kinar, I think one of the things that was really interesting was I feel like this keeps coming up about non-technical teams, getting them to use AI, getting them to like be much more comfortable with AI. I'm kind of curious about what the reactions were like on the non-technical team side of things in terms of as you folks hosted your hackathon days. And can you talk a little bit more about that, because I'm so curious to also get into experiments next.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think the non-technical teams, and again, this is the as you say, a little bit more of a mental shift, a mental model shift. When you talk to the non-technical teams, by the way, this is true also for the technical teams, but I think we've moved past that point, is about knowing that these AI systems are probabilistic versus deterministic, right? They really like to kind of use a tool saying, I told you to do blah, I would expect a result. If I said X and I want the result Y, that should come in. That's not really what happens with some of the AI tooling, because there is a nuance to it on how you prompt them. What is the data you're providing? What is it that you're asking? How you're asking for it? So I think one of our early, things that I observed was really helping them understand how the probabilistic systems work. So that was kind of the first time where they understand the power of it, but there is a little bit of a uncertainty and a little fear of, oh, this is not a deterministic system, right? So we kind of walk through that a little bit. The other thing is, I think the pace throws everyone off, because we are used to learning tools over a certain period of time, and here we are to saying you could do this today, and tomorrow we just come and say, oh, but there's another better tool and a better model that you could use, and they're like, oh my god, this is changing so fast. So there's a pace aspect of it, really deeply understanding how you do that. So what we are trying to do, again, is just constant education. And we are trying to create, again, I think we'll probably get into this also, Eva, is this whole notion of cross-functional teams, where how we can actually work together. So not only are you building something, but you're building it together. So what happens is the knowledge goes down to the lowermost, like ICs who are actually doing the work, as opposed to kind of coming top down, right? So there's some other things we are trying out too.
Yeah, and Kinar, I think one of the things that we've been delving into is experimentation, right? And one observation I've had from meeting Forward's wider engineering team too is that you folks move quickly. I feel like for an org your size, whenever we've typically done POCs and engagements and partnering together, it's taken a long time, like in terms of like security reviews, AI reviews, and just generally, getting to the POC stage. And I noticed, like, for example, for customers like versus like MongoDB and others, things have actually moved much faster, because it was like a top-down mandate that, hey, we need to start experimenting and we need to start using AI. I'm really curious, like, what is it for you folks that is allowing you? I know you folks are also using LangChain/Langsmith. We talked about this earlier too. What is it that makes Forward different in terms of you folks having that, I don't know if you call it bandwidth or openness to trying out new tools? What is it that gets you folks to basically experiment and start, deploying POCs and doing it quickly too?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. We also have our CEO who's kind of very much into it. So just structurally, what I'll say is I have engineering under me as well as the AI lab. On the engineering side, I've been the one kind of like at least initiating and asking the teams to kind of use some of the toolings. It's also self-directed as well. But on the AI lab side, it's like a dotted line to the CEO, and he's been able to manage like, what is the big picture vision? How do we kind of go about building it? So, there is a little bit more of a, I wouldn't want to say top-down mandate, but a top-down interest. There's so much interest. There's so much excitement. We are all learning. We are sharing, right? The other aspect, I think, along with that is we as a company, one of our strengths as a company is the culture that we build and some of these mechanisms that we build. So we are constantly sharing, either it's a one-on-one setting, either it's a group session, or if we meet, so we do twice a year Paloozas we do when the whole company comes together. And we've actually made a point to actually kind of talk about some of these things, even at that level in our global huddles, which is once a month. We actually make it a point to talk about some of the innovations that we are doing. And this actually does a couple of things. Breaks down the fear a little bit, because there is fear. We all know that. It breaks down some of the aspects of, oh, I don't necessarily know this. Should I ask it or not? So it creates a lower barrier to ask more questions. And then secondly, it feels like this is doable, right? So you want to also make sure it's like within the realm of learning. If people think it's like too far out of their reach, they're not going to learn either. So there are some other things. I think it's a big, how should I say, across all different teams, we are like very tightly integrated. And I know there's this whole notion I'm kind of going to get into is the whole test and learn experiment. Like, how do you test and learn, which is the experimentation notion. We are actually trying to really deeply ingrain into our culture now. And we do this with our existing features too, not just the AI features. And we're kind of just building on top of that, right? So also create like a little bit more decentralized organization where individual teams can make their own decisions. We are trying to get there too.
Folks, just as a reminder, keep your questions coming. I know some of the questions have already started coming in for Kinar. We are going to get to those questions right at the end of his segment. So please feel free to ask all of your questions in comments. So I think, Kinar, speaking of experiments, one of the things I thought it was really interesting that you had shared was the 1 week autonomous experiments. Can you walk us through what that typically looks like? Is it 1 week? Is it 2 weeks? Which is like 2 weeks is a typical time frame we've heard. But I'm kind of curious as to like, what do people need to experiment within that 1 week? Is it one hypothesis? Is it multiple? And what is the goal in terms of like at the end of that 1 week for any team that is running the experiment?
Yeah, and this is one of the experiments that we are going to kick off. I think it's just a timing thing that we haven't kicked it off yet, but I can talk about the concept and the model that we are running with is in order to do test and learn effectively, you want to make sure the decision-making is done at the level from people who are the subject matter experts or who are actually the ICs who are going to be doing that. We did a little analysis, which I think everyone does it, is if you look at your whole software development lifecycle, or even go look at your product development lifecycle, which is from the time you get an idea to the time you deploy to production, coding is only a certain piece of it. We say probably 20, 25%, right? The numbers could vary between different orgs, but still a bigger chunk is to getting to the point to getting to coding. And what we are asking is, sure, you can, with the new tooling, we say we can make coding faster, but how about we take the other stuff and crunch it down too? And how do you do that? By getting the SMEs together and saying, you guys within this range of a roadmap or this initiative, you guys figure out how fast to build stuff. So this is our first attempt at doing like a week worth of getting a handful of people together. I think right now we're saying it's about 5 people. We'll get together for a week. No kind of guidance, but they know general which area that they want to improve. And they will be the one picking stuff, and they'll be building something. Like for 5 days, they are fully dedicated to this project, if you may. And they build something and deploy something to production behind a feature flag, right? And that, I think, is where the true decentralized way of operating will happen, right? And I think that's the idea. And again, just to quote again, Andrew Ng from the Langsmith conference, he mentioned the same thing, which was, I think, very heartening for me to hear in the conferences. We don't know where the technology is going to go. It's changing so fast. And the only way you can do it is create cross-functional teams and run these experiments, because the biggest value comes from the iteration. If you look at the traditional development model, it's like, oh, build, test, deploy, monitor. In the AI world, I think it's all the 4 plus an iteration on top of it, because either it's a human in the loop, or it's learning through evals or LLM messages, whatever you want to do it, that's the part, I think, even for me, someone who's been doing it for a while, sometimes I couldn't remember. So these cross-functional teams can do all of that, build, test, deploy, monitor, but they iterate. They constantly look at the output and the outcome, and then they say, okay, let's go here, let's go there, which means your whole decision-making collapses. Anyway, so I think that's the model we're going to be trying out now.
All right. Well, I think we're going to get into questions since I know we're almost out of time. The show just flies. So starting off with, how do you differentiate between mistakes and failures, and how do you create a culture that encourages intelligent failure? I like that question from Tassos.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, first of all, I would like to say, by the way, I do have a book here too. I'll probably show it to the audience as well. The difference, first of all, is to understand what's the difference between a mistake and a failure. Mistake, when you say someone made a mistake, which means there is a right way to do things. A failure means you actually don't know what the outcome is going to be. You're approaching it in a certain fashion and you failed getting to an outcome. And I think we use them interchangeably, but they're actually very, very different. So one of the things I think that we want to do is, in order to encourage intelligent failures, you've got to shoot for something bigger, right? If you're shooting for something which is more operational and all, I think you can make them, you can make those kind of changes through process or automation and others, right? Failures means you try to build something which you think it can do, try with a hypothesis, and if you fail there, that's okay, because you learn from it and you go forward. Anyways, I'll show you guys the book which I'm referring to. This is a book called The Right Kind of Wrong. And it's basically, this is where the whole concept of intelligent failures comes in. It's by Amy Edmondson, and she's the one who coined the term psychological safety. So it's kind of very interesting. We can talk about this forever, but in this day and age, when we talk about test and learn, you want to make intelligent failures, constantly learn from it with the net of the psychological safety. I think that's a bigger premise the book talks about too. But that's a great question, by the way.
And I actually wanted to also address this question because I was curious if you had a different take on this. We also answered this earlier. Do you recommend learning about the basics about LLMs before working on agents? Does it help to understand how things work under the hood? Kind of curious how the business teams tackle this versus technical teams, but also what your take is on this question.
Yeah, I would say I was backstage, so I heard a little bit how Syed was answering it, right? I'm fairly aligned with what Syed was saying, is that I think it's good for a personal knowledge to know how LLMs operate. There's no denying that. But from an actual application perspective, I would say it's not as much needed, right? I think how you apply the LLM for your situation, the context, and kind of the data you provide for it to make decisions, I think those are the more relevant ones. So I would say learn for your own sake. It's really important. But there are so many model providers out there. There are so many different ways you can kind of run them locally versus cloud and services based and all of that. You can kind of get lost. So I think if you want to keep your focus, I would say just make sure you are learning some of the basics, but really focus on how to use them. I think that would be the better way to go.
And talking about basics, for someone starting to explore coding with AI, what's the one thing you recommend learning and mastering first?
Oh, wow. This one, I think it's really dependent on someone, on where they are in their journey. But I can actually give you some high-level pointers. Is one, when I started my journey, I started using deeplearning.ai. Again, that's Andrew Ng's website. It's a really good source. You can learn a lot of different AI technologies. The other one, which I really found, if you want to learn about LLMs and agents and stuff, Hugging Face is another great site. They've got some really great training courses. And the last one I would say is absolutely Coursera and others, which I think have some really good courses. So I would say you have to figure out what your comfort level is. Start from there. Don't try to overdo it. But my biggest message, if I could give to everyone, is please make sure you are playing with AI technologies for at least 60 minutes every day. That's non-negotiable, because only when you do it, I hope you all will get to your own aha moments to be able to kind of apply it for more and more complex use cases as you go.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I love about our audience in the show was that when we started out, we were primarily focusing on engineering leaders. But now we're seeing the audience get much more wider, and just even based off the questions that we're seeing. And how do you give engineers permission to delegate to agents without output becoming a black box?
That was a very good question. What we are doing is, again, we are a we are in the highly regulated space. We are in the lending industry. So for us, we have all of our systems. We've looked at kind of from an infosec perspective, what access does it have to data and what tooling and what systems does it access. So we've already locked that down. So for us, I would say it's a little bit easier because when we are using, say, like Claude Code and whatnot, we know it's only getting access to a handful of resources. So we've kind of locked it down that way. If I may even go and say this, before you start implementing and rolling out AI for your whole company, you want to make sure InfoSec is the first group that kind of comes in and looks at it, because by default, some of these tools kind of give you access to everything, and you want to be very, very careful. Our InfoSec guys are amazing on our company, and they've given us some examples of we couldn't even think of how much they could interact with the systems and data and share it outside without your knowledge. So I would say start there first, and make sure you start with as much needed access first, and then kind of slowly expand. But give it only to systems that you think are most needed. I would say it'll start with probably code and your data structures probably.
Yeah, I think the thing that's been surprising me the most is that so many tools are in many cases not truly SOC 2 certified. They don't have their policies public. You can't really understand, are they actually storing any code? And I feel like, there are, and then the other thing is, are they training on your data? That's a really big question. That's a very, very important one. I mean, I feel like we've been very transparent about our practices. There's zero training. We never do any code storage. And I feel like that's not what we're seeing from every vendor, which is really surprising. And I think it was even just a couple of months, I think this was just 1 month ago when GitHub Copilot announced that by default, they are going to be training on your data, unless you go into settings and you actually switch that off. So I'm really surprised as to where, the direction that the industry is heading in and what's happening on the vendor side of things, where it feels like, is my data still my data? and so these are great points, Kinar, to bring up, especially as folks are talking to InfoSec back and forth.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome. Well, Kinar, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show, and you've already given so many book recommendations, reading recommendations, and even learning recommendations. It really feels like you are a forever learner, and I hope that's what everybody that's joined takes away. But thank you so much. And before you leave, we would love for you to just do a 1-minute pitch on Forward. So for the folks that are listening in, they're curious about what Forward does, and also if Forward is hiring. So if you can just please bring just very quick 1-minute pitch.
Okay, so Forward Financing does lending for small and medium-sized businesses. We've been in existence for about 14 years. We are a high-growth, mid-sized company. We really like to invest in the small businesses who like to get loans. So from the time someone applies to us, we can get you a loan between 3 to 4 hours. We can have the money from you. From the time you do a submission, we can get the money that fast. Our goal with our new CEO coming in is to kind of really go and optimize our automation and systems process, again, using AI to be able to grow. Yes, we are hiring. If you go to forwardfinancing.com/careers, you should be able to see there are roles in product and many other departments. So I think please take a look at it, and feel free to reach out if you think you or someone might be the right fit for them.
And the reason we do this is because someone actually did find a role and apply and got through. This was actually at HubSpot in one of our prior episodes. So we do. We always love to share the amazing work that folks are doing. So, Kinar, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much, Iba.
Thank you, Kinar. All right. Well, folks, that brings us to almost at the end of our show. Before we do so, we're going to bring Syed back on stage. Hello, Syed, and just get your really quick thoughts on some of the stuff that Kinar shared. What I loved was the psychological aspect. I did not know that she had originally coined the term, and that the author had originally coined the term, because I remember in our prior episodes, we've actually heard that term brought up. It's also been brought up even at our dinners. And I feel like some of the things about, psychological safety is Do you feel that safety, in terms of like being able to bring up and voice concerns? That was my favorite part, but I was kind of curious what yours was.
No, definitely that. And the whole aspect of diving in, experimenting, and letting people experience it is way more important than understanding how exactly all the science works for this. Because that's where they have the aha moment. That's where they, I would say, get sold on it. They're like, okay, this can do so much. I think that's usually the best way of learning how to use any of these, whether it's an agent or just a simple prompt with an LLM.
100%. And I'm already starting to get some feedback on the show so far. Thank you, folks. It's been, I feel like, it's been packed with information. And anytime I interact with Kinar, I always learn a ton. So I'm so glad that you folks got to learn a ton too. Well, that brings us to the end of our show. It's been so much fun to hang out with all of you, and of course, congratulations to our Kitty Town winner as well. Every show, as you folks know, we pick out winners. But here's the thing: our next show is already live on Luma, as well as LinkedIn. Next show is going to be explosive. So this is actually with one of our customers, the company's called Spark, but they're doing almost 1,000 PRs in terms of code reviews and velocity. And so we want to learn, like, how are these guys doing this level of velocity? And what's funny is that we're already starting to get customers that are even crossing over that velocity and doing 5,000 to 6,000 PRs a month. So I feel like all of the engineering performance equations are just, it's just everything's changing so quickly. And so our next episode 5, is already live. Sign up for the next episode right there. So that's the Luma link. And then it's also in our comments. And I feel like one of the things that's just so amazing is that every time we do this show, I feel like we're like a step function ahead in terms of what's possible. And I feel like even, for us, one of the things that's been really fun is to see all of the use cases that are possible with OptiBots. But I think the next episode, we're really going to get to delve into having a small team, but then having really, really high velocity. And if 1,000 PRs are possible in terms of, I like that. Vivek is throwing in some spice in there. Counting PRs as velocity seems like counting lines of code. That's a good one. I think, Vivek, you got to join the next episode because we're going to debate this very, very point. Let's do this. Let's debate it. Definitely going to debate that. So yes, thank you folks so much for joining us. And it's been a great show. And we will see you in the next one in episode 5 when we start to delve into PRs. And are 1,000 PRs possible? Let's see. And yes, I think we're already getting some shout outs for the coffee. And yes, hopefully Vivek will be a winner in the next time. So folks, thank you so much for joining us. And we're so excited. It's been a action-packed show. And and yes, the recording is available. We're just getting some questions around the recording too. Every episode is recorded and we do upload it to YouTube. So if you've missed past episodes too, we've had some, action-packed past episodes as well. Head on over to youtube.com/optimal.ai. That's actually our official YouTube channel. And we do publish all of our episodes on YouTube. We are also publishing our episodes on Apple Podcasts. And so every single episode, you can either watch it with the video on YouTube or just the audio, since I know some folks are joining a little bit later. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Gitfather, for joining the show.
Yeah, really enjoyed the show and it was awesome having Kinar here. It's really great to get insights, especially with the way that he handles AI adoption on his teams.
All right. And folks, there's a little message from OptiBot incoming. So stay tuned.
I got this.
lines dancing, syntax tight in the limelight. Octobot scanning, got the bugs in its sight. Binary magician, algorithm so clean. Review game strong, AI supreme. Octobot spitting truth in the digital stream. Flipping through the code like a hacker's dream. Lines refined, it's a pristine scene. Future of the craft, you know what I mean. Variables tangled, Opti unties the knot. Logic rewired, every